But really what clicked for me was I grew up also reading fantasy books, and I was the kid who got the stick and attacked the trees because they were the monsters in the backyard. So in part of my brain was like, I can tell my parents I'm doing this for my profession, but really I just want to go play with swords because that sounds so much fun.
Welcome to the When I Grow Up podcast, where we talk about what people wanted to do when they grew up, what they do now, and how they got there. And today's guest, DC, is a newer friend that I met, but I only just recently learned about his career. He went on a pretty straight career path where he wanted to be in theater and he ended up in theater, but the end result is so much more exciting than the beginning result. I'm excited to introduce you to him today, and we are doing a two-part podcast episode for this one because there is so much to this episode that I wanted to share with you. So let's get started and dive in. DC, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So I'm excited to have this conversation because, and we'll get into it, but I think that your career, your job is just so fascinating. But before we get there, I ask everybody this first question. What is it that you wanted to do when you grew up?
I actually wanted to teach theater is what I wanted to do as a little child.
Yeah.
And that's partly because my great grandparents were T. Earl and Catherine Pardo, who you will not know, but they started and then chaired and taught in the BYU theater department. Like they began it back in the whenevers. And they were the teachers of a lot of people who've gone on, like Fred Adams, who started the Utah Shakespeare Festival, was one of their students. And as a little kid, we always went to Nana's house on Sundays to see and cousins would come down and we would all join there. And like Fred Adams would show up sometimes to see my great grandmother as
Oh
well.
my gosh.
I was a little kid. I had no idea who that was. And so it didn't matter to me at all. He was just some guy. But everyone always spoke so highly of my great grandparents and the impact that they had on everybody's lives. And so as a little kid, I just grew up hearing that these theater teachers had everyone just loved them. And so as a little kid, I was like, that's what I want to do. When, I didn't know what that meant at all when I made that decision as a little child, but it stuck with me as the thing I do. And when I, got to the point in my life where I was actually going to be deciding what I wanted.
Like the now that you're grown up story, we move into what, and it's what you, tell the listeners what you do now.
So I teach theater. that is my main job. But my specialty in theater, which is what I think that you are talking about particularly, is stage combat. So I teach actors how to sword fight and anything that is violent in the stage. That is my focus in theater. I teach movement, which is not always about stage combat, but it's how actors can create new physicalities for the different characters they create. But when I'm working professionally in the theater, when I'm not teaching, it is stage combat that I 95% of the time do. Mm-hmm. I'm going to Syracuse stage in later on in this year to do Les Mis for them. I'm going to assistant director. I'll be doing all the fights for that show. That'll be the third time that I've done that show. So, it is a fun aspect of stage combat that, or at theater, stage combat is that when I had the idea that I wanted to teach theater stage combat, I did not even know that such a thing existed. And I didn't find out that such a thing existed until I was in college.
Okay. So you must have gone to college for theater then, is that right?
Yeah. I had done theater in high school, but like a lot of high school kids, I was just there to have a good time. Like I was better at it than a lot of kids, and so it came very naturally to me, and so I loved it, and so I just did all the plays. I was in president of the drama club, all that kind of stuff in high school. But it still didn't. It still wasn't. That was just a thing you did in high school, right? It hadn't clicked in to be like official yet. But then couple of years out of high school, I was like, nope, theater is what I want to do. I want to teach acting, but I want to act professionally first. And so I went to school for theater uh, at BYU, where my great grandparents started the department. So I got to perform on the stage that is named after them there. And that was a very experience. Um, but that was where I, my buddy came up to me a holiday and he's like, oh, dude, there is a 3-week workshop in stage combat in Las Vegas in the summer, and we should go.
Wow.
And I had never heard the word stage combat. I had been in fights in plays before this,
Hmm.
but there was not anybody who had been brought in who was stage combat trained. We had uh, fencers who would come in and show us fencing moves, but fencing is very different than stage combat because fencing is
Hmm.
designed to hit the person for real, and in stage combat we work very hard to not do that while making it look real. So I had been terrified for my life many times um, on stage in fights prior to that.
Sure.
Uh, but but really, what clicked for me was I grew up also reading fantasy books, and I was the kid who got the stick and attacked the trees because they were the monsters in the
Hmm.
backyard. So in part of my brain was like, I can tell my parents I'm doing this for my profession, but really I just want to go play with swords because that sounds so much fun.
Right.
And I couldn't go that year because I'd already given my money to go to London for a study abroad, which was also
Hmm.
amazing, but not stage combat related. But then the next summer, I would like plan to I'm gonna go, and my buddy and I went together, and 3 weeks of just awesome. Learned unarmed and broadsword and rapier and dagger were the first three weapons that I learned while I was down at that workshop. And then my buddy and I came back to our school. We were still undergrads, but our school hired us as staff to teach stage combat at our school while we were still students because nobody else in the state did it at the time, which is why I have never seen one. There was nobody who did it.
Right. I
Uh,
was gonna ask you that, and I know if people are watching, there's a cat in my lap now, which she decided to interrupt, but she's my pod kitty, so it's fine. But I was gonna ask you about that because like you said, you didn't even know that kind of job existed, but I also have to imagine that it exists in very few places as well. Is that true?
Yeah, like it had been fencers back in the golden age
Hmm.
of swashbuckling movies, which was when sword fighting kind of entered the cultural zeitgeist. It was, Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone sword fighting on the beach. But Basil Rathbone was a Olympic fencer. Like he was a really good sword fighter in real life for fencing. And so that was what all that swashbuckling stuff was based on. And a lot of people had done that for film,
Hmm.
but not a lot for the stage, not in any kind of organized way. It was fancy people, but people in England started a stage combat society,
Okay.
and somebody from America had gone over there and trained with them, and then came back to the states.
Hmm.
And there was a small group of people, uh, six gentlemen who were like at that time in 1975 or 78. I'm going to get embarrassed for not knowing exactly. It was right around the mid 70s.
Okay. Gotcha.
Shouldn't have said that. Where they came back, they're like, we're going to start the Society of American Fight Directors based
Wow.
on the British novel or the British model.
Hmm.
So yeah, the first time that there was something officially stage combat in America was mid 70s. And it was very small and was just a few people, but it has now grown quite large and were recognized by Actors Equity. And so clauses in the contract are about they need somebody with the SAFD level of credential. Doesn't have to be SAFD people, but they use the SAFD as the model for what the
Yeah.
level of training should be,
Yep.
because they've codified it a lot. And it's so I started in '93, and it's now, gosh, or '94. Sorry. So yeah, I've been doing this over 30 years now, and that's crazy. But
I do that all the time when I start to tell people, "Oh, I've been a therapist for, oh crap, it's been 16 years." And then I do get it. I know you have a few more years on me, but I do get that.
yeah, uh, but I've watch the art form evolve. So like the things that I
Yeah.
learned back in the mid 90s was when I started doing it to what we're doing now. It's gone leaps and bounds, and that's been really cool to be able to like look back and go, we've learned how to do it much better
Mm-hmm.
since then. And I've been part of it for 30 years, which
Yeah.
is also super fun. So yeah, I just
How I'm so curious, how would somebody who's listening now and says, "Oh my gosh, that sounds like the coolest job ever. I want to do that." How would they start to get into that world? Is it to join that organization, or is it to find the right school? Like, what does it look like?
yeah, you don't need to join the organization, especially if you've never done it before. You want to make sure you that it's a thing you want to do because
Fair, fair.
like everything, it's got its really awesome parts and it does have its slogs as well. Uh,
Hmm.
when you're doing it on a professional level, it is still a job. But it is a really fun job. My parents used to say it was every 10-year-old's dream job. Uh, I haven't,
That's fair.
I think that's fairly accurate. Sorry, I forgot the question now.
Well,
Where did you want?
how would somebody today find a position like yours?
Yeah, so you don't have to join the society, but you do want to find a teacher of stage combat. And there is a lot of groups who teach. There's a couple of different big organizations. There's a couple of just small businesses of people who may or may not belong to one of those stage combat organizations, but they will hold workshops. If you're in a bigger city, you can look on theater posting boards because workshops will
Yeah.
pop up on Facebook has groups, and Instagram all have pages for the stage combat organizations. And there's weekend workshops that pop up all over the country all the time now. There used to only be like 6 to 8 of them, and
Yeah.
there's at least one or two every month now, sometimes more, and they last from one day to weekends to week
Hmm.
longs to 3 weeks. I run
Hmm.
my own workshop for 3 weeks in the summertime, the Central Illinois
Okay.
Stage Combat Workshop, where you can come and learn certified in 3 different weapons from the SAFD, and we rotate those weapons every year. But there's
Hmm.
other places that do. The SAFD has a national workshop every summer. There's an organization called Dueling Arts International that runs workshops as the organization, and then there's just a bunch of teachers from those organizations who also do it. So there's lots of things you could do to get introduced to this idea of what stage combat is. But
Yeah.
it there is a there is a distinction between sword fighting and stage combat. There's a lot
Hmm.
of groups called HEMA, which is basically historical martial arts, where they are trying to really find what those sword fighting techniques from those old manuscripts and the manuals and the
Yeah.
teachers when they were
Yeah. Yeah.
actually working on it. And they're like, how do we do that? And there's some really cool, more historically accurate stuff. Stage combat does not purport to be that. We are
Right.
purposely not trying to recreate specifically what historical martial arts was, because that was how you killed people for real. But we do try to modify what those things look like, and how can we do that now safely for an actor, so instead of going home bloodied you can go home fine because
Hmm.
you are safe. It looked really violent to the audience, but it has been very, very carefully crafted so that you are not in danger.
Yeah. I mean, I have to imagine that combat for theater, it's both a safety piece, but also I would have to imagine that if it were real combat, it wouldn't look as exciting. Sort of like you do have to create how it looks to an audience. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, because we're trying, the big motto is everything has to be safe, but it also has to be dramatically effective. So from the audience is watching the show and they're like, that looks very safe. Then that you've not done your job. We want the actors to be watching characters who are in grave danger. Like this character rather is fighting for their life, even though the actor is very safe. The character needs
Mhm.
to be terrified. The character has to believe that their life is on the line and that's what they're fighting for. Uh, So yeah, the mixture of those two things, it is storytelling, right? It is more
Right.
choreography than combat, because everything is meticulously planned. And like if you do it this way, it's fine, but if you do it a little bit different than that, you're opening yourself up for danger. So there's a very particular do it this way and this what looks good, versus and is safe, and then this way either is not safe or looks bad, and those are the things we try to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Right. I have to imagine that there is a lot of it's fun, and I imagine there is a lot of seriousness to it, in that you're not just going and swinging swords around or anything like that, but instead, like you said, it's like choreography with swords, which means that there's a safety element there too that you have to be serious about.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to have a lot of fun in my classes because it is fun. We should be having a good time.
Right.
We're fighting swords, and this is awesome. But there is a lot of the safety stuff, and I always have to remind students, right, because they get into it. They're like, "Oh, this is so awesome." We're like, "Stop, stop, stop! You're starting to go too fast, or you're starting to think about the wrong things. You're
Hmm.
thinking about how it feels. You cannot think about how it feels. It is awesome, but
Hmm.
you can't think that if that's where your brain is. You're going to hurt somebody." So,
Yeah.
trying to get everyone to be like, I want to be able to get in, because again, the idea this is for actors, right? Stage combat
Right.
isn't just so the people can fight with swords.
Right.
HEMA, for people who want to just fight with swords, like that's where you want to go. But if you want to go onto a stage and convince an audience that what they're seeing is actual violence without you being ever in danger or maybe getting hit, the stage combat's your thing. But it's for actors, which means there's a lot of what we do in stage combat that is acting techniques. We are talking about
Mhm.
there's illusion and misdirection. That's all part of stage combat. It's a little tiny sliver of magic as well, because we're
Mhm.
trying to we want the audience to see what we want them to see, and we want to hide what we want to hide, because we are
Mhm.
not doing that thing really. uh so yeah,
Yeah.
there's that balance in the room of how do I make this look just nasty while keeping everybody
Yeah.
happy and safe.
Yeah. I think one of my most embarrassing high school moments involved pretending to be stabbed on a video, but and you'll I hope you'll laugh at this. Like,
I
first of
will.
all, it was the whole like sword under the arm like trick,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
did it towards the camera, first of all. And second of all, the sword fell. So as I'm like pretending to die, it was like Julius Caesar or something. As I'm pretending to die, I'm like picking up this fallen sword and tucking it back under my arm. We got
Yeah.
a good grade, it's fine, but it was like I think of things like that as like the most amateur thing. But there is that you have to know things even as simple as how you're facing an audience, when you do things and what you do.
Yeah. That is one of the big things, that it matters where the audience is. Stage combat
Yes.
matters where the audience is, because you can do the
Hmm.
same thing that works. If your audience is on that side, it works. But if the audience is over
Yeah.
there, is does not work. Same technique. So yeah, it is very much where are the eyes. You have
Yeah.
to arrange yourself towards where the eyes are.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to ask you because you said, it's a great job, but it's a job. And there are some elements that aren't always your favorite. And I'm curious about those because part of this podcast is not just telling everybody the sunshine and rainbows of things, but also where it's hard for you and what you do about that. So can you tell me what's hard, or where do you find the hardest lift of the job for you?
So most of it, the for me, theater just in general, all of the theater stuff, the actual doing of the theater is that's why you do it. That's where the joy
Yeah.
is. I'm fighting with the swords. That is the joy. I'm in a room of artists, and we're all collaborating together, and
Hmm.
everybody's work is going towards telling the best story that we can tell. So all of the that part is awesome. And that is where my brain is wired, which is why I love that part, right? So my brain is just like, yeah, we're telling stories. I'm working with people. I'm fighting with swords. Like, but that's just like the thing you get to do after you do the job part.
You'll
With
prep after you
yeah,
figure out how to do the job. Yeah.
yeah. There's a lot of the training. I think is a lot of fun, but there is a lot of sweat, and you get a lot of bumps and bruises along the way, because we are trying to like press the push the limits of what can we do, and you're just messing around. And while you're not very good at the thing, like anything, but just when you're fighting with swords, sometimes when you're not, when you're working, you make mistakes and you learn from them. Um, but even that is kind of fun. But for me, it's I gotta I gotta apply for jobs. I gotta audition for the jobs. Like there's all this stuff that is how you get to be in the room to do the fun thing.
Yeah.
That is, for me, that is not much fun. But that is a really big part. You can't do the one if you don't do the other one. So and that's where my brain is wired to not do that. So I have to like really focus, and that's why it's more drudgery for me. Is like it's not the easy part. This is the part I have to like sit down and like focus
Mhm.
and prep and plan out. And I can do that, but I just don't like it. I like to
Yeah,
have the job already because it's playtime.
I get that. And that's actually a really good point because a lot of times I'll tell people it's not that you can't do a certain part of the job, it just may not be your favorite part. And that is okay, especially like you said, if you can get your brain focused on that end goal of, but I get to do the fun stuff if I do the
Yeah,
hard stuff, that's what pushes you through the hard to get to the part you really like.
yeah, and it's the same thing. Like because my full time job is a professor, right? And if the job was just teaching and doing theater, best job ever.
Mm-hmm.
And there is all of the meetings and the committees and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that really make it a job. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
you go, I have to do this part of it, so I get to do the fun part. If it was
Mm-hmm.
only that part, I would not want this job at all. But because it allows me to be in the classroom and to interact with the students and to do theater there as well, like that is worth me putting in all of that effort so that
Mm-hmm.
this thing. And that every job has that. There is not a job where everything is awesome. There's always a part of it
I agree.
that is gonna be a job, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine. You do it, so you get to do the. That's why you have to. I think you have to be able to love what you do in some capacity to
Mm-hmm.
be happy, because
To
you're
get
going to
through
be
it.
spending a lot of your time doing that job where you're not having fun. But it's for the moments where you do get to have fun or that are satisfied in some way that is
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. You just soak in those moments of this is why I do it. And in those moments that you feel all of that, that's where you kind of settle in and go, yep, this is why I'm doing all the other hard stuff. This is what makes it worth it. Right.
100%. It's so
Mm-hmm.
good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation, for being able to tell people about a job that they probably didn't know existed too. I always love saying some of the best jobs out there that people love. I would argue most people say I didn't even know this job existed, and this is one of them. Well, I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Like I said, part 2 is coming soon, and it is going to get even deeper into the joys of the work that DC has. So I hope you'll tune in, follow, share, subscribe, like all of the fun bits that help this channel out. And if you are interested in a particular career path and you want me to try and find it so that I can tell that story, let me know in the comments. All right, guys, take care.